feels like life passes you by. People say they're in a rut, that they're going through the motions on autopilot. Feels like everyone else is dancing to the beat, but you can't feel the music any longer. You want to sit this song out and maybe the next one too. If there is one constant in the world, it's that nothing is constant. Everything changes, even rocks, mountains, and the ground we're standing on. Change may be gradual or sudden, but nothing stays the same from minute to minute or day to day. It's inevitable. So to be successful leaders, employees, and individuals, we must plan for and adapt to change.
Whatever we aspire to in life, whatever we want to achieve in life, it all begins with one thing. It all begins with a goal. Viktor Frankl, an incredible survivor of one of the most traumatic events in history, World War II, he once said, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." So what are our whys? When we look at Vincent van Gogh, his why was to paint the world from another perspective. Derek Redmond, his why was to become an incredible Olympic runner in the 400-meter sprint. When we look at Itzhak Perlman, his why was to become one of the most amazing violinists today. So with all of these whys, what were their hows? We're all pretty familiar with the adage of Stephen Covey's begin with the end in mind that was with his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But begin with the end in mind, I suggest begin with the change in mind. Begin with the hows in mind. We experience those hows in the training and the practice that we do, but also the critics, the people who tell us we can't, the people who tell us we're no good, and surviving past that. So let's look at Vincent van Gogh. The guy was 27 when he started to paint. If we were to look at today's life, we all think that we need to be at the top of some company by the time we're 30. And where did this idea come from? It actually came from an idea back in the 50s when an advertising company said, "Hey, who should we target?" And they decided to target people in their 20s and their 30s. So all of a sudden people are looking at these ads of people super highly successful in their 20s and 30s, and it coming in our mind that, oh my gosh, we have to be successful too. Which really isn't the case in Vincent van Gogh's mind back then. The guy was 27, and he was like, I want to become a painter. It's a desire I have, it's my goal. So we started painting, and his mentors started giving him really negative feedback, and everyone around him saying, I don't know what you're doing, including his parents. His parents saying, I don't know why you're doing this, Vincent, you're no good. No one's going to like your artwork. Mentors starting to say he has no talent whatsoever. And he experiences a lot of what we have all experienced in the world, which is discouragement. And he starts to think, should I give up? But then he integrates a word that has become one of my favorite words, which is autotelic. Autotelic is Greek, meaning self-goal. It means that you fulfill a goal for fulfilling that goal unto itself and not for any external consequences. He came back to his why. And he said, you know what, I love painting so much that I don't care if anyone likes it. I don't care, regardless of the external consequences, regardless of the praise that I might or might not get, I'm painting for myself. He embraced wholly that word autotelic. When he was 27, he painted for 10 years. He painted prolifically. He would spend day and night. Then knowing what the guy went through, I would probably chop my own ear off. He went through scurvy, he starved, he lived with his parents for so long, and he also experienced so much loneliness. If you imagine just doing what you love for 10 years, knowing of all the critics that are just shouting in your ear, you're no good, you're no good, you're no good, imagine how you would want to give up. You probably experienced that already. All throughout that 10 years, the only person who was his cheerleader was his brother Theo. His brother Theo said, you can do this. I know that you can get through this. You're going to complete and fulfill your why of becoming an incredible painter, of showing the world from a different perspective. Age 37, he sold his first painting, The Potato Famine. And his brother Theo was cheering, oh, you finally did it, Vincent, you finally did it. But he's like, no, this is where the real work begins. Let's look at Itzhak Perlman, greatest violinist of all time. Do you know how many hours that guy must have practiced? Malcolm Gladwell says that it takes 10,000 hours to not only become an expert, but to become absolutely phenomenal at what you do. When I was growing up as a musician, I learned an adage that we're probably pretty familiar with: practice makes perfect. Well, when I was younger and I had to practice 2 hours a day, I became pretty smart, and I was like, well, 1 + 1 = 2, right? So I pulled out a tape recorder, and if anyone's 25 or younger, I'll tell you what a tape recorder is after. But I pulled out a tape recorder, I recorded myself for an hour, and I just practiced, and I'm like, oh, this is such a brilliant idea, this is such a great idea. And after that hour, I stopped the tape, I pressed rewind, I hit play, I was out the window to my friend Kim's house. So my friend Kim and I were playing Clue, and my dad calls, and he's like, Camille? I was like, yes. He's like, I'm in your room, and you're not? And I kept noticing the same mistakes over and over again, and I opened the room to find a tape recorder. Come home immediately. So I walked home thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be punished, I'm going to be grounded. He said, you know what, that was pretty creative, never do it again. But he taught me an incredible lesson I will never forget. He said, you know what, Camille, I've always told you that practice makes perfect, but practice makes permanent. Our habits determine and guarantee our future success. Everyone recognizes this. We take probably advantage of that every single day. We're taking advantage of it right now. There's light everywhere. Every time you wake up in the morning, you turn on the light switch, you do it because of a habit. Rarely do I think of what went behind that light bulb. Anyone remember how many times it took Thomas Edison to get this right? Yeah, it took 1,200 times. 1,200 times. I think if I were trying to invent the light bulb, and there was always a race to get to it, who's going to get to it first? I can't even imagine, 1,200 times, I would probably get to like number 17, I'd be like, you know what, I meant for something else. I'm not meant to invent the light bulb. Someone else can do it. He knew his why. And he was not only passionate, he didn't really care about the praise of being the first of doing this. He was so passionate about inventing things that weren't there before, while enduring so many critics of, oh, you're so dumb, why don't you quit already? He said, you know what? I found out 1,200 ways not to invent the light bulb. And it didn't even start when he invented this. It started when he was much younger. When he was 12, he lost 90% of his hearing in his left ear. And his dad said, son, I'm so sorry about this. And he's like, are you kidding? It's much less distracting for me. And I think about that all the time, because we're all distracted in this distracting world. How he took something potentially negative and turned it into a positive, because he knew his why. Later in life, when he was older, he had his whole factory full of his inventions, full of the charts that were later burned up in a factory fire. And he came back the next day after his factory fire, got together all of his employees, and he said, you know what? We have an amazing thing here. We have all of our mistakes burned up. We didn't need them anyway. He was such an optimist. He knew how to adapt. So begin with the end in mind, begin with the change in mind.